Hey, what's up? Richard Bryce here. Today, I'm going to be helping you to understand why you miss so many easy balls. You're doing well, you're in the rally, things are going okay, you get that short ball, it should be a shot that in theory you can put away, and then you miss it. So we're going to be talking about the different aspects of that and things that you might need to work on to reduce the number of silly, unforced errors you make when you get into good positions in points. I hope you find this video helpful. If you do, it'd be great if you give me a thumbs up, and if you haven't already done so, make sure you subscribe to my channel. Okay, so let's start to figure out why you miss so many easy balls when you get that opportunity in a point and you should be putting it away and you send it sailing long or into the net. You know, the first thing we need to talk about, which is one of the most obvious things, but it's also one of the easiest solutions, is you're probably not practicing this type of shot very much. Like, unless you have a coach or unless you have a ball machine, there is a very good chance that you don't work on it. You know, people tend to spend their time practicing and working on from the back of the court, working on their rally ball, and because of that, they become a little bit more proficient in it. But this is a different shot. You know, the technique is a little bit different. What you have to do with the racket head is going to be a little bit different. The footwork patterns are a little bit different. So you've got yourself into a good position in the rally. Now you're coming in, and you just haven't practiced it. So one of the easiest things that you can do, so I personally like to use a ball machine for this because it allows me to do it, but if that's away from your financial means, then it's not possible where you are, the best plan for this is to try and find someone else who loves tennis as much as you and kind of coach each other. You know, obviously if you've got a coach and you can afford to hire a coach, then that's fantastic as well. But if, again, that isn't possible for you, you just get yourself a ball basket, split the cost between a couple of you, split the cost of the balls between a couple of you, and then just feed each other so you can literally practice hitting these short balls. Because if you never practice them and then you step out into a match situation, it's really hard to execute it in real time. So my kind of first advice is spend time working on it, and just doing that, honestly, that might solve all of your problems, because once you've hit a couple of thousand of them, you're going to get in a point and it's going to be way more likely not to be a problem for you. Okay, so now I've mentioned that, let's kind of look at some of the technical aspects that can help you to solve the problem. The first one is going to be footwork. I spend a lot of time talking about footwork, and I'm going to spend more and more time talking about it because it's the area that lets so many players down. So we need to mention it. Unless you get your feet set up in the right position, it gets a little bit trickier to do. So there's generally two different types of footwork pattern that you're going to be playing on the shorter ball. There's going to be a neutral stance, and there's going to be more of an open, semi-open stance. So when the ball is lower, you're going to be hitting that more from a neutral stance. But because you're generally moving forwards, you're often going to be doing a hop step, which looks like that. So you've got to kind of modify your preparation. So as you move in, you've got to get turned sideways, but then you're going to be swinging and hopping, and this back leg kind of kicks up as a bit of a counterbalance. So you're through there, and and this is a shot you see Federer executing really well. Just like everything else, Federer executes really well, but that's the hop step. You can hit from that neutral stance doing a pivot step, but generally if you're going to move forwards to the net, once you've done a little bit of practice, the hop step's the one to go for. Now what I highly advise you do, practice it without the racket. You can practice it at home, just feel what it's like to get the balance just doing the hop step. When the ball is a little bit higher, you're going to be setting up for more of a semi-open or more of an open stance, and then trying to go from there. So this one's going to be a slightly different swing path, which we'll talk more about in a second, but here I'm just kind of focusing on the footwork. So you'll get into position, you'll recognize the short ball, you'll come in, you'll set up, and then you'll be hitting more from that open stance. So lower ball, hop step, higher ball, set up in the open or semi-open stance, and hit through from that, and again potentially following it into the net, or maybe you hit a winner and you don't need to. So that's the first thing you need to consider, and like we just said, big part of it is going to be spending time practicing it. Okay, so now that you understand the footwork that you need to practice, we need to kind of look a little bit just at the swing path, because it's going to be very different. On the lower ball, you're probably going to need to get a little bit more topspin than you realize. From there, we've really got to kind of get the ball up and down. So as you're coming in and doing that hop step, you're actually trying to really kind of get up the back of the ball. Like, I know A lot of coaches talk about not using wrists so much in tennis, but you need to be able to use your wrist. You need to be able to control your wrist. You're not flicking your wrist, you're pronating and supinating your wrist, but you literally just want to play around with it. So you can do it without the footwork. Just get used to just controlling the ball. What happens, you know, maybe you won't do it quite like this when you're playing a point, but just play around with it. Get used to the feel. You know, you really, to execute all these shots, you've just got to develop the hand-to-eye coordination. You've got to get the feel of what it's like to do these different things. So don't worry about making mistakes on this stuff. Just get used to, you know, what do I have to do to kind of get the racket down below the height of the ball and to get up the back of the ball so that when the ball is lower and below the height of the net, I can still come in and I can make it work. And maybe it modifies a few things in the swing path. I don't want to go into too much detail. I just want you to get out there and just, you know, practice it. You can drop some balls for yourself, but like I said, at some point you're going to need to get someone else to drop it for you. It's going to be a very different swing path there. We're really trying to go up the back of the ball, but when you've got those higher balls, it's going to be a much more through type of shot, and often the racket is going to be finishing down lower. So again, it's something that you're going to need to practice. And this one, again, you can do a lot of work just dropping it for yourself. But if you look at the different swing path for this higher ball, it's very different to that lower ball that we just had. Now, and I guess one piece that I found really useful, both right-handed and left-handed, because I always used to struggle with these higher balls massively when I was younger. I used to go to bed at night, like having nightmares about them. For me personally, and it might be different for you, if you've got amazing timing, it might not apply. But for me personally, I think I used to do too much of a big backswing. So the way I kind of thought about it, by more abbreviating the take back and just having less distance to cover, I found that was a really useful piece of the puzzle for me in terms of executing this on a more consistent basis. So in terms of swing path, you've got to practice it. These, you can actually practice it with drop feeding it, but obviously at some point you need to practice it with the ball coming towards you, which is where the practice partner comes in. So one thing that we haven't mentioned so far that's obviously going to be really important for all this is your kind of shot recognition. You know, the first thing that you have to do is you have to recognize that you've got that easier ball and then move into position. And then we've got those two different footwork patterns. We've got the lower one and then we've got the higher one. So you've got to move and you've got to set up in the right position. And here's where it can be a little bit problematic. When you're hitting that lower ball, you can afford to be much closer to that just because of the mechanics and the position that you're going to contact it in. But when you're hitting the ball up around shoulder height, you're going to need to be further away from the ball when you make contact. So this is something that trips a lot of people up. So firstly, it can trip people up because, you know, they just don't think about it. So hopefully now you know when the ball's lower, you can have a closer contact point. When the ball's higher, you've got to be further away or it doesn't work. But potentially your visual system might not work well enough to identify those things quickly enough to help you get set up in the right position. I talk about vision in just about all of my videos because everything in tennis starts with vision. I spent most of my life being frustrated on court because my visual system prevented me from doing certain things. So I've worked a lot on all these different technical aspects and trying to improve in those areas as well, but it wouldn't have worked if I couldn't have judged the distance well. So I've created a free Tennis Vision Starter program to help you train your visual system, because the chances are if you're really struggling and you're missing too many easy balls, it might be because you're having issues in these areas. So I'll place the link down in the description. I'll place the link up there so you can get hold of that vision program and then kind of start to incorporate it, work on the visual system, and then consciously be aware that if the ball's lower, this is the footwork pattern up the back of the ball. It can be a little bit closer. If the ball's higher, this is the footwork pattern, a bit further away, and you're going to be hitting more through and potentially finishing down there. The last thing that I really want to cover on this is about the kind of the mental toughness, mindset, discipline, focus aspects. So we've just talked about the ball recognition, we've talked about the footwork, we've talked about the swing path, we've talked about some of those things, but you've got to recognize where you are at the moment, what you're currently able to perform and execute on a regular basis. So if you're playing a lot of matches and your goal is to win as many matches as possible, that's kind of the main thing that you're trying to do. If you get into these positions in a match and you're stepping up to it and you're like, oh, I'm going to miss this one, I'm going to miss this one, and you're already kind of thinking in that mindset, You've got to try and pump the brakes on what you're doing and play within your means. So my goal for you, and I make all these videos to try and help you to improve your level so that eventually you can step out on court, you can get a short high ball and you can just slap it away for a winner, unless you're playing Djokovic and it comes back to you and then you've got to play another 20 shots. But that's my goal for you, is to help you become as good as you can. But it's important to recognize where you are now. Tennis, a lot of it is about developing confidence and kind of feeling happy and confident in your ability to execute shots. So if you keep missing the ball over and over again, it's not going to help you to build your confidence. So what you want to do is just kind of pump the brakes and don't go for such an outrageous winner. Play within your means, just take a little bit of pace off it, understanding that until you're at a pretty darn high level, and I would say until you get to like top of 4.5s, but maybe 5.0s, until you get to that sort of level, most players just give you points because they miss simple balls. So if you just get the ball back in play, that's enough to beat so many people. So when you get this short ball, instead of thinking about crushing it and destroying it, and like we see these amazing players play on TV and it seems like it should be so achievable, but as we all know, it's not quite that easy. So just recognize where you are, have that disciplined mindset that, okay, instead of trying to crush this topspin forehand for a winner, I'm just going to place it 50-60% of the pace, a comfortable shot that you can execute, put it in the corner, follow it into the net, you know, make your opponent play that shot. If they hit an amazing passing shot, fair play to them. Sometimes it happens, but more times than not, they're just going to give you the point by missing their passing shot going for way too much, or they're going to give you an easy volley that you can put away, and kind of think about things that way. Okay, so that's all I got for you in this video. Hopefully it's been useful, hopefully it makes sense.